Welcome to a journey into the darkest corners of myth and legend. In today's video, we explore the demon beasts that defied heaven and hell, creatures so fierce, so cunning, that neither angels nor demons could contain them. Across 5 thrilling chapters, we'll uncover their origins, their battles, and the terrifying powers that set them apart from anything humanity has ever imagined. From celestial rebellion to infernal chaos, these beings defied all divine law. Prepare yourself for a story of horror, awe, and mystery that spans the boundaries of heaven, hell, and everything in between. In today's journey, we're diving deep into 5 incredible chapters that unveil the mysteries, monsters, and myths that have been lost to time. From ancient texts to forgotten legends, each chapter reveals secrets that challenge everything we thought we knew about the world, and beyond. Prepare to witness the hidden forces, the dark beings, and the untold stories lurking in the shadows of history. Stay close, because by the end of this video, you'll see the world, and its ancient mysteries, through a completely new lens. Let us begin with Chapter 1. Chapter 1. Born before judgment, creatures outside divine law. Before angels were weighed by obedience, before demons were condemned by rebellion, before heaven drew its lines and hell carved its pits, something else existed. These were not fallen beings, because there was nothing yet from which to fall. They were not rebels, because no command had yet been spoken. They were born before judgment, creatures that emerged in a universe still unfinished, ungoverned, and morally undefined. Ancient traditions across cultures preserve echoes of these beings. They appear in fragmented myths, forbidden texts, half-remembered chants, and scriptures deliberately edited to erase them. They are often mislabeled as demons, monsters, or chaotic gods, but these names fail to capture their true nature. These entities existed outside divine law, not because they rejected it, but because law had not yet been created. This chapter explores the terrifying idea that not all supernatural beings answer to heaven or hell, and that some forces have never recognized either. 1. Creation before order. Most religious systems describe creation as a deliberate act, light divided from darkness, land from sea, spirit from flesh. But older mythologies suggest something far more unsettling: creation as a gradual containment of chaos, not its origin. In Mesopotamian cosmology, before the gods ruled, there was Tiamat, the saltwater abyss, mother of monsters. She did not rebel against divine authority, she predated it. When the younger gods sought order, they did not judge her, they slaughtered her, using her body to build the heavens and the earth. This act was not justice. It was necessity. Similarly, in early Hebrew cosmology, the opening verses of Genesis hint at a world already present. The earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. That deep, Tehom, is linguistically linked to Tiamat. It was not evil. It was untamed. The creatures born in this era belonged to no moral framework. They were not good or evil. They were raw existence, living expressions of instability, hunger, and unbound potential. 2. The Watcher's forgotten predecessors. The Book of Enoch speaks of the Watchers, angels who descended to earth, defied heaven, and corrupted humanity. But Enoch also hints at something older, beings already present before the Watchers arrived. These entities are described indirectly: spirits already inhabiting desolate places, intelligences that taught forbidden knowledge without being sent, and forces that even angels treated cautiously. Later traditions would identify them as proto-spirits, sometimes called the firstborn of chaos or the nameless ones. Unlike angels, they were not created to serve. Unlike demons, they were not punished for rebellion. They simply were. When the Watchers fell, they entered a world already inhabited by these pre-law beings. Some allied with them. Others opposed them. But none answered to heaven's judgment. This is why certain evils described in apocryphal texts are said to be not counted among the fallen. They were never under command to begin with. 3. Not fallen, not redeemable. One of the most disturbing theological implications of these beings is this: they cannot be redeemed, punished, or judged in the conventional sense. Judgment requires jurisdiction. Heaven judges angels because they belong to heaven. Hell punishes demons because they are fallen angels or corrupted souls. But what of beings that were never enrolled in either system? In later demonological texts, exorcists occasionally warn of spirits not subject to the name. These entities do not react to holy symbols, divine authority, or infernal threats. They do not fear hell, hell is beneath their notice. Such beings are often associated with desolate wilderness, abyssal waters, ruins older than civilization, places where time behaves strangely. They are not interested in souls. They do not bargain. They do not tempt. They consume, distort, or observe, driven by instincts older than morality itself. 4. The Qliphoth and the broken vessels. In Kabbalistic tradition, before divine light could fully manifest, vessels were created to contain it. These vessels shattered under the intensity, producing the Qliphoth, shells of existence cut off from divine harmony. While often described as demonic realms, some esoteric interpretations suggest the Qliphoth are residues of prejudgment creation, echoes of beings and forces that existed before divine balance was stabilized. These forces are not evil by intention. They are malformed by cosmic timing. They were created too early, shaped by incomplete law, and left behind when order finally crystallized. This explains why Qliphothic beings are often portrayed as irrational, grotesque, and paradoxical. They are not rebelling against order, they never learned it. 5. Monsters older than sin. In Greek mythology, the Titans are not villains by nature. They are older gods, born from Gaia and Uranus before Olympus was established. When Zeus overthrew them, it was not because they were evil, but because they belonged to a previous cosmic generation. The same pattern appears everywhere. Jotnar in Norse myth. Rakshasas in early Vedic lore. Apkallu before the flood. Nephilim before the law. These beings are consistently described as powerful, unstable, and resistant to authority. Not because they rebel, but because authority came after them. Sin is a violation of law. These beings existed before law, making them immune to sin, but also excluded from grace. 6. Why heaven sealed them away. If these creatures were not evil, why were they destroyed, sealed, or forgotten? Because order cannot coexist with pure pre-order. Heaven is not merely a place of goodness, it is a system. Law, hierarchy, obedience, and harmony define it. Beings that predate this system introduce unpredictability. They bend reality, distort cause and effect, and resist categorization. Ancient texts repeatedly describe divine acts of containment, not judgment. The binding of Leviathan. The sealing of the abyss. The imprisonment of ancient kings beneath mountains. The burial of gods beneath cities. These were not punishments. They were cosmic quarantines. 7. Why they still matter. These beings were never fully destroyed. They were sealed, fragmented, or exiled. And because they were never judged, they were never erased. Their influence persists in nightmares without symbolic meaning. Irrational fear of vast spaces. Myths of sleeping gods. Legends of places where angels refuse to tread. In theological terms, they represent a terrifying truth. Not everything in the universe is moral. Some things simply exist, indifferent to justice, mercy, or redemption. 8. Theological implications. If beings exist outside divine law, then divine sovereignty is not absolute, it is contextual. Order was imposed, not inherent. Judgment was introduced, not universal. This challenges comfortable narratives of good versus evil. It suggests that heaven and hell are not eternal opposites, but solutions to a problem, the problem of chaos that already existed. These prejudgment beings are reminders that creation was not clean, instant, or safe. It was violent, corrective, and incomplete. The fear before sin. The greatest fear in ancient religion was not hellfire or punishment, it was formlessness. A return to a time before names, laws, and meaning. Creatures born before judgment embody that fear. They are not demons because demons rebel. They are not angels because angels obey. They are what came before the choice. And though heaven and hell claim dominion over the universe, these beings linger at the edges, silent witnesses to a time when even God had not yet spoken judgment into existence. Chapter 2. Leviathan and the Unchained Abyss. Before kingdoms were crowned and before heaven fixed its stars in their courses, there existed a depth older than memory, a yawning absence beneath creation known as the abyss. It was not merely darkness, but unformed potential, a place where chaos had not yet learned the meaning of boundaries. From this primordial deep arose Leviathan, the serpent of the unchained waters, a being neither fully demon nor fully God, but something far more terrifying, a remnant of creation before law existed. The birth of the abyssal serpent. In ancient Near Eastern cosmology, the sea was not life-giving but hostile, a symbol of disorder that resisted divine authority. Leviathan emerged from this sphere, described not as a creature born into the world, but as something the world was forced to build around. He was said to coil through the foundations of reality itself, his body forming living currents beneath the earth, his breath stirring storms, his movements shaking continents. Unlike later demons, Leviathan was not a fallen servant. He had never knelt. He had never rebelled, because rebellion assumes law, and Leviathan predated law itself. Ancient texts describe him as the twisting serpent, the fleeing serpent, the dragon that is in the sea, Isaiah 27 verse 1, language that implies motion without restraint and form without finality. In this way, Leviathan was not evil in a moral sense. He was chaos embodied, a reminder of what existed before divine order hardened reality into shape. The Unchained Abyss. The abyss was not hell. Hell was a place of punishment, hierarchy, and judgment. The abyss was something older and more dangerous, a realm without moral structure, where force alone defined existence. To be cast into hell was to be condemned, to be cast into the abyss was to be unmade. Leviathan ruled this realm not as a king but as a natural law. Ancient Jewish mystics believed the abyss could not be destroyed, only sealed. Thus, Leviathan was bound not because he was defeated, but because the cosmos could not survive his freedom. This belief echoes through multiple traditions. In Ugaritic texts, a similar entity named Lotan battles the storm god Baal. In Babylonian myth, Tiamat embodies the chaotic sea before being slain by Marduk. Yet Leviathan differs from these figures in one crucial way: he is not killed. He is restrained, preserved, waiting. Why preserve chaos? Because total order is just as destructive as chaos unchecked. Chains forged from creation. According to later apocalyptic traditions, Leviathan was bound during the early acts of creation itself. The chains that hold him are not metal but metaphysical, laws of gravity, time, mortality, and death. Each law of nature is a shackle, keeping the serpent coiled beneath the surface of existence. The Book of Job offers the most vivid portrait of Leviathan's invincibility. God challenges Job not by presenting Leviathan as an enemy, but as a testament to divine power. Can you pull in Leviathan with a fishhook? Nothing on earth is his equal, a creature without fear. This passage is not a warning, it is a boundary. Leviathan marks the line beyond which humanity must not trespass. To confront him is to confront forces that cannot be morally negotiated with, reasoned with, or conquered through strength. Leviathan versus heaven. Later theological traditions reframed Leviathan as an adversary of God, but this was a necessary simplification. In truth, Leviathan does not oppose heaven, he exists outside its jurisdiction. Heaven commands angels. Hell governs demons. The abyss answers to neither. This is why Leviathan is so feared in apocalyptic literature. When Revelation speaks of beasts rising from the sea, it is not merely symbolic, it is recalling the ancient terror that what was sealed may one day stir. Some texts suggest Leviathan will be slain at the end of days, his flesh becoming a feast for the righteous. Others insist he cannot be killed, only repurposed, his destruction signaling the unraveling of the laws that hold reality together. Both interpretations share a chilling implication. Leviathan's release marks the end of the current order of existence. The serpent beneath the world. Medieval mystics believed earthquakes, tidal waves, and unexplained storms were signs of Leviathan turning in his sleep. Sailors whispered prayers before voyages, not to ward off demons, but to appease the ancient serpent beneath the waves. In Kabbalistic thought, Leviathan becomes associated with the Qliphoth, the husks of divine power that exist outside holiness. He is not sinful, he is unfinished. Where God brings form, Leviathan dissolves it. Where heaven defines, Leviathan blurs. This makes him uniquely dangerous. Demons corrupt souls. Leviathan erodes meaning itself. Why Leviathan was never destroyed. The most unsettling truth about Leviathan is not his power, but his necessity. Ancient theologians understood something modern minds often reject. Chaos cannot be erased without erasing freedom. If creation were perfectly ordered, nothing new could arise. There would be no choice, no transformation, no growth. Leviathan exists as the pressure beneath the world, the reminder that order is not guaranteed, that existence must be maintained. In this sense, Leviathan is not a villain but a cosmic test. His presence ensures humility. His chains remind heaven itself that its dominion is not absolute, but sustained. The abyss within. Over time, Leviathan's symbolism evolved. He became more than a sea monster, he became an inner reality. The abyss was no longer only beneath the earth but within the human soul. Fear without reason. Rage without target. Despair without cause. These were considered whispers of the abyss, echoes of Leviathan's nature manifesting psychologically. To lose oneself to these forces was to sink into the deep, a phrase that appears repeatedly in ancient texts. Thus, Leviathan became a warning, not of an external beast, but of what happens when chaos is embraced without restraint. Signs of unchaining. Apocalyptic traditions describe signs that Leviathan's bonds are weakening. Waters rising beyond their boundaries. Storms defying seasonal order. Nations consumed by internal collapse rather than external enemies. Knowledge expanding faster than wisdom. These are not punishments, but symptoms, indicators that the balance between order and chaos is destabilizing. In this framework, the end of days is not divine wrath alone, but the failure of creation to maintain its own boundaries. Leviathan's final role. Some mystics believed Leviathan's ultimate purpose was not destruction, but transition. When the current world can no longer sustain itself, the abyss will reclaim it, dissolving reality back into potential so something new can emerge. This idea terrifies and consoles in equal measure. It suggests that endings are not annihilation, but return. Leviathan does not hunger for souls. He hungers for form, to break it down, to remind existence of its fragility. The eternal watch. Even now, Leviathan is said to sleep with one eye open. Angels do not guard him, laws do. Gravity, time, death. Should these fail, even heaven would tremble. For Leviathan is not the enemy of God. He is the shadow cast by creation itself, the reminder that beneath every order lies an abyss, unchained only by restraint, waiting not to conquer, but to undo. And if Leviathan ever fully rises, it will not be a war between heaven and hell. It will be the end of the distinction between them. Chapter 3. Behemoth, Ziz, and the Failed Chains of Heaven. In the hidden strata of ancient cosmology, not all monsters were enemies of creation. Some were pillars meant to uphold it. Among these were Behemoth, Ziz, and Leviathan, the three primeval beasts of Jewish myth whose existence predates the familiar order of angels, demons, and humanity. While Leviathan coils within the abyssal seas, Behemoth and Ziz dominate land and sky. Together, they form a forgotten triad that reveals a troubling truth. Heaven itself once struggled to control the forces it unleashed. This chapter explores Behemoth and Ziz not merely as monsters, but as cosmic failures, beings bound, restrained, or delayed by divine decree because their full freedom would unravel the world. Their chains were not forged from iron, but from divine law, cosmic balance, and deferred judgment. And those chains, as ancient texts quietly suggest, were never entirely secure. The three beasts of the first world. In Jewish apocalyptic literature, especially the Book of Enoch, 4 Ezra, 2 Baruch, and later rabbinic writings, creation is not depicted as a serene act but as a containment operation. God does not merely create, he restrains. The world is stabilized by dividing chaos into three realms. Leviathan, the chaos of the deep, the sea. Behemoth, the chaos of the earth, the land. Ziz, the chaos of the heavens, the sky. Each beast is assigned a domain so that no single force overwhelms the others. This division is itself an admission. Chaos cannot be destroyed, only managed. Unlike later demons who rebel, these beasts are not morally evil. They are ontologically dangerous. Their existence threatens creation simply by being what they are. 2. Behemoth, the unmovable horror of the earth. Behemoth is first described in Job 40 verses 15 to 24, where God challenges Job by pointing to a creature of unimaginable strength. He is the first of the works of God. Only his maker can approach him with the sword. Behemoth is not hunted. He is not fought. He is left alone. More than a beast. Later Jewish tradition transforms Behemoth from a massive land animal into a primeval earth entity, dwelling in a desolate realm east of Eden, sometimes identified as Duodain, a wilderness beyond human reach. Behemoth represents untamed physical power. The violence of nature, earthquakes, famine, collapse. the brute force of existence without moral direction. He does not tempt. He does not deceive. He crushes. B. Why Behemoth could not be destroyed. According to 4 Ezra 6 verses 49 to 52, Behemoth and Leviathan were created on the fifth day, but the world could not contain them together. God separated them, confining Behemoth to dry land and Leviathan to the sea. This implies a terrifying limit. Creation itself was insufficient to hold them both. Behemoth's destruction is delayed until the end of days, where he is destined to be slain and consumed by the righteous. Until then, he lives, not chained in iron, but confined by geography and divine postponement. His chain is time. 3. Ziz, the sky that would not obey. If Behemoth embodies overwhelming mass, Ziz embodies overwhelming scale. Often overlooked, Ziz appears in Psalm 50 verse 11 and expanded rabbinic law as a bird so vast that its wingspan darkens the sun. Its head reaches the heavens. Its eggs can flood cities when they fall. Ziz is not merely large. It interferes with cosmic order. A creature of the firmament. Ziz inhabits the space between heaven and earth, the firmament, a realm already fraught with tension in ancient cosmology. This is the same space occupied by fallen angels, watchers, storm spirits, divine messengers. Ziz's presence here is problematic. Unlike angels, it does not serve. Unlike demons, it does not rebel. It simply exists, and that existence destabilizes the heavens. In some traditions, Ziz must keep one wing folded at all times so as not to collapse the sky. B. The failed dominion of heaven. The skies are supposed to belong to God and his host. Yet Ziz occupies them without permission or obedience. This is crucial. Ziz exposes the limits of angelic authority. No angel slays Ziz. No heavenly army expels it. Like Behemoth, Ziz is tolerated, delayed, and confined by rules rather than force. Its chain is self-restraint imposed by divine law, not domination. 4. The chains that were never forged. Unlike fallen angels bound in pits or demons sealed in deserts, Behemoth and Ziz are not imprisoned in the traditional sense. This absence is telling. Why were they not chained? Because they predate the mechanisms of punishment. Angels can be bound because they exist within moral order. Demons can be sealed because they violate it. But Behemoth and Ziz exist before morality, before rebellion, before sin. They are not criminals. They are structural threats. Thus, heaven resorts to indirect chains. Separation of domains. Limits of movement. Deferred destruction. Cosmic agreements rather than force. These are failed chains, not because they break, but because they must never be tested. V. Apocalyptic destiny, when the chains are removed. In eschatological texts, Behemoth, Leviathan, and Ziz are destined to be destroyed at the end of time, often slaughtered in a final cosmic banquet. This imagery is symbolic, not literal. Their deaths represent the end of unmanaged chaos, the final stabilization of creation, the moment heaven no longer fears its own foundations. Until that moment, they remain alive. Why they must die at the end, not before. If destroyed too early, the balance of creation collapses. Chaos, paradoxically, is necessary. Behemoth anchors the land. Ziz regulates the sky. Leviathan contains the sea. Their existence is a curse, and a necessity. 6. Theological implications, when God does not conquer. These myths present a radically different theology from later traditions of omnipotent control. Here, God does not annihilate chaos. He negotiates with it. The beasts expose a worldview where power has limits. Creation involves risk. Control is temporary. This is not weakness, it is cosmic realism. 7. Behemoth and Ziz as symbols of human fear. Psychologically, Behemoth and Ziz represent forces humans cannot fight. Natural disasters. Societal collapse. Existential insignificance. The vastness of the universe. They are not evil because they hate humanity, but because they do not notice us at all. That indifference is more terrifying than malice. 8. Why these beasts were forgotten. Unlike demons who whisper or gods who demand worship, Behemoth and Ziz do nothing dramatic. They wait. Modern theology prefers enemies that can be defeated, sins that can be repented, and monsters that can be slain. Behemoth and Ziz offer none of that comfort. They remind us that Not everything wrong can be fixed. Not every threat has a villain. Some chains exist only because they must never break. 9. The silent warning of the failed chains. The true horror of Behemoth and Ziz is not their strength, it is heaven's response to it. Heaven did not win. Heaven contained. And containment implies fear. These beasts stand as ancient warnings buried in scripture and myth. Creation rests on compromises, not absolute victories. When the end comes and their chains are finally removed, it will not be because heaven has grown stronger, but because the world is ready to end. Chapter 4. The Watcher's Mistake. Before humanity learned the weight of history, before kingdoms rose and fell beneath written stars, there was a moment when heaven itself hesitated. This moment, brief, disastrous, and irreversible, is remembered in ancient tradition as the mistake of the Watchers. They were not demons. They were not rebels in the beginning. They were guardians. 1. Who the Watchers were. The Watchers appear most clearly in the Book of Enoch, fragments of which were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls. They are called Erin, those who watch. Their function was simple in design but vast in consequence: to observe humanity, to guide the natural order, and to ensure that creation unfolded according to divine intention. They were stationed between realms, neither fully bound to earth nor entirely removed from it. Unlike the seraphim, who burned with pure worship, or the archangels, who delivered direct command, the Watchers were administrators of the world. They studied humanity's development, its potential, and its fragility. This proximity was their danger. Where other angels looked upon creation from eternity, the Watchers lived within time. They saw humans not as fleeting dust, but as growing beings, curious, creative, and capable of change. And this closeness birthed a question heaven had never faced before. What happens when the eternal envies the mortal? 2. The forbidden curiosity. The Watchers' fall did not begin with lust. It began with curiosity. They watched humans shape tools, form families, sing, mourn, and dream. Humanity's weakness fascinated them, but so did humanity's freedom. Humans struggled, yet chose. They erred, yet learned. They suffered, yet endured. For immortal beings bound by divine law, this was intoxicating. The Watchers began to ask questions not permitted to angels. What is it like to grow old? What is it like to create life? What is it like to choose without perfect knowledge? In Enochian tradition, curiosity is not sin, but acting upon forbidden curiosity is. This is where the Watchers crossed the threshold. 3. The Oath on Mount Hermon. The Watchers did not fall alone. According to Enoch, 200 Watchers descended together under the leadership of Semjaza. They gathered on Mount Hermon, a place later associated with divine encounters and spiritual conflict. There, they made an oath. Not merely to descend, but to bind themselves to the decision, so that none could turn back without condemning the others. This was a collective rebellion, not against God's authority directly, but against the boundaries God had established. Their vow was simple and catastrophic. They would take human wives. They would share forbidden knowledge. They would live among humanity as something other than Watchers. This oath reveals the true nature of their mistake, not desire alone, but solidarity in transgression. They chose loyalty to one another over obedience to cosmic order. In heaven, this was unheard of. 4. The knowledge they should not have taught. The Watchers did not merely descend, they taught. Each brought fragments of celestial knowledge meant only for divine administration. Azazel taught metallurgy, how to forge weapons and armor. Others taught sorcery, enchantments, astrology, and the movement of heavenly bodies. Some revealed secrets of cosmetics, manipulation, and deception. Others unveiled the names of angels and the mechanics of spiritual power. This knowledge was not evil in itself, but humanity was not prepared to wield it. The result was imbalance. Weapons arrived before wisdom. Power arrived before restraint. Desire arrived before moral maturity. Civilization advanced, but at a cost. Violence escalated. Hierarchies formed. Exploitation followed innovation. Humanity gained godlike tools without godlike responsibility. This is why ancient tradition does not portray the Watchers as simple villains. Their mistake was misplaced generosity, the belief that knowledge alone elevates beings. It does not. 5. The birth of the Nephilim. The union between Watchers and humans produced something unprecedented, the Nephilim. Neither angel nor human, these offspring were described as giants, not merely in size, but in appetite. They consumed resources, dominated societies, and eventually turned against humanity itself. Enoch describes them devouring all that humans produced, and when resources failed, turning on humanity, consuming flesh and blood. Symbolically, the Nephilim represent unchecked power born from imbalance. They are the consequence of crossing boundaries without foresight. Where angels were meant to guide and humans to grow, the Nephilim embodied excess, strength without compassion, intelligence without humility. They were not born evil. They became catastrophic. 6. Heaven's response: judgment, not destruction. When the cries of humanity reached heaven, the response was swift, but measured. God did not erase creation. He did not annihilate the Watchers instantly. Instead, judgment was targeted. The Watchers were bound beneath the earth, imprisoned until the final judgment. Azazel was cast into darkness, buried beneath jagged stones in the wilderness. The Nephilim were destroyed, not merely physically, but spiritually, becoming the restless spirits later associated with demons. This distinction matters. The Watchers were punished for transgressing role, not for existing. The Nephilim were erased because they represented an unsustainable distortion of creation. Heaven corrected the imbalance rather than abandoning the experiment of humanity. 7. Why the Watchers' mistake matters. The Watchers' sin was not rebellion in the Luciferian sense. They did not seek to overthrow God. They sought to participate in humanity. This is why their story is so unsettling. They wanted intimacy without limitation, influence without accountability, creation without consequence. In this sense, the Watchers mirror humanity's own recurring error, reaching beyond boundaries before understanding responsibility. The story warns that even good intentions can corrupt when they ignore order. 8. Theological meaning: boundaries are sacred. In biblical theology, boundaries are not punishments, they are protections. Angels have roles. Humans have roles. Knowledge unfolds progressively. The Watchers violated this rhythm. Their mistake teaches that holiness is not proximity, but obedience. To cross a boundary without permission, even out of compassion, can fracture the world. This is why the Watchers are remembered with tragedy rather than hatred. They are cautionary figures, beings who loved creation too much and ordered too little. 9. Echoes in later traditions. The Watchers' mistake echoes throughout religious history. In Genesis 6, the sons of God and daughters of men. In Greek myth, the gods breeding heroes and monsters. In Mesopotamian lore, divine kings born of heaven and earth. In later demonology, fallen angels teaching forbidden arts. Each tradition preserves the same warning. When divine power enters the human realm without restraint, catastrophe follows. 10. The true tragedy of the Watchers. The greatest tragedy is not their fall, but their irreversibility. Humans can repent. Humans can grow. Humans can be redeemed. The Watchers cannot. They saw too much. They chose once. Eternity remembers. Their story stands as a cosmic boundary marker, a reminder etched into myth and scripture that creation survives not by limitless freedom, but by rightful order. And so the Watchers remain, bound, watching no longer, not as monsters, but as witnesses to the cost of crossing sacred lines. Closing reflection. The Watchers' mistake is not ancient history alone. It repeats wherever power outruns wisdom, where knowledge ignores responsibility, and where compassion forgets restraint. They fell not because they hated humanity, but because they loved it without understanding the limits love must obey. Chapter 5. The Beasts That Will Rise Again. Throughout human history, monsters have rarely stayed dead. In myth, scripture, and apocalyptic prophecy, certain beasts are not merely defeated, they are delayed. Bound, buried, drowned, or cast into cosmic prisons, these entities exist in a suspended state, awaiting an appointed time. Their return is never accidental. It is woven into the structure of the universe itself. This chapter explores the idea that some beasts are not relics of the past, but future events, forces prophesied to rise again when the world reaches a point of moral, spiritual, or cosmic imbalance. These are not simple monsters. They are symbols of unresolved chaos, embodiments of truths humanity has tried, and failed, to erase. 1. The ancient pattern: destruction is never final. Across cultures, a striking pattern emerges. when primordial beasts are defeated, they are rarely annihilated. Instead, they are sealed, chained, or cast into liminal spaces. Leviathan is bound in the depths. Typhon is buried beneath Mount Etna. Jormungandr sinks into the sea. The Watchers are imprisoned beneath the earth. The beast of Revelation receives a mortal wound, yet lives. Why? Because in ancient cosmology, chaos cannot be destroyed without destroying creation itself. Chaos is the raw material of existence. The gods, or God, can only restrain it. Thus, the return of these beasts is not rebellion, it is release. 2. Leviathan, the chaos that sleeps beneath the world. In biblical and Near Eastern tradition, Leviathan is more than a sea monster. It is the embodiment of untamed creation, a reminder that the world rests atop something ancient and violent. The Book of Job describes Leviathan as invincible, breathing fire, immune to weapons, and utterly beyond human control. Psalm 74 implies God shattered Leviathan's heads, but did not erase it. Isaiah 27 offers a chilling prophecy. In that day, the Lord will punish Leviathan, and he will slay the dragon that is in the sea. The phrase "in that day" is eschatological, it refers to the end of days. Leviathan's final destruction is postponed until the world's last reckoning. Until then, it remains dormant. In apocalyptic interpretation, Leviathan represents chaos re-emerging when divine restraint is lifted. When order weakens, politically, morally, spiritually, the sea monster stirs. Leviathan will rise not as a physical serpent alone, but as global instability, uncontrollable systems, and forces no authority can subdue. 3. Behemoth and Ziz, the triad of returning doom. Jewish tradition speaks of three primordial beasts. Leviathan, the sea. Behemoth, the land. Ziz, the sky. These creatures are said to be preserved for the final age, when they will destroy one another in a cataclysmic battle, their flesh consumed by the righteous. Behemoth is not a mere animal. It is described as unmovable, feeding on mountains, embodying brute, earthly power. If Leviathan is chaos, Behemoth is unchecked dominance, empires, militarism, exploitation of the land. Ziz, the great sky beast, blocks out the sun with its wings, representing cosmic imbalance and divine judgment from above. Their return signifies total collapse, sea, land, and sky undone. This is not random apocalypse, it is cosmic correction. 4. Typhon, the storm that waits beneath the earth. In Greek mythology, Typhon is the final monster born to overthrow Olympus. After a world-shattering battle, Zeus does not kill him. Instead, Typhon is buried beneath the earth, his movements causing earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Mount Etna becomes his prison. Typhon represents rage that cannot be erased, only suppressed. When the earth shakes, the ancients believed Typhon stirred in his chains. The myth implies that when divine authority weakens, the forces once defeated will rise again. Typhon is chaos fueled by resentment. What happens when suppression replaces resolution? In modern terms, Typhon's return manifests as environmental collapse, geological unrest, and the violent backlash of a world pushed beyond its limits. 5. Jormungandr, the serpent that ends the gods. The Norse world serpent, Jormungandr, encircles Midgard, holding the world together by threatening to destroy it. His fate is tied directly to Ragnarok. When he rises from the sea, the oceans flood the land. He battles Thor, poisoning the sky with his breath. Thor kills the serpent, but dies shortly after from its venom. This is crucial, even victory is fatal. Jormungandr's return teaches that some threats cannot be neutralized without consequence. The end of the serpent is also the end of the old gods. The beast rises when the cosmic balance is broken, when oaths are shattered, kin slay kin, and morality collapses. Ragnarok is not caused by the serpent is released by decay. 6. The Watchers and the Giants, the return of forbidden knowledge. The Book of Enoch introduces a terrifying idea. Fallen angels known as the Watchers taught humanity forbidden arts, weapon making, sorcery, bloodshed. Their offspring, the Nephilim, devastated the earth. God imprisons the Watchers beneath the earth until the day of judgment. But Enoch also suggests their spirits, disembodied giants, become demons, roaming the world until the end times. In apocalyptic belief, the Watchers will be released temporarily before final judgment. Their return marks a resurgence of forbidden knowledge, transgressive power, and unnatural union between realms. This return does not require literal giants. It appears as technology outpacing morality, knowledge without wisdom, power divorced from accountability. The Watchers rise when humanity repeats the sin of seeking godhood without restraint. 7. The Beast of Revelation, death that refuses to stay dead. The Book of Revelation describes a beast that rises from the sea, ruling the world through fear and deception. One of its heads receives a mortal wound, yet the world marvels as it heals. This is resurrection without holiness. The beast is a composite monster, echoing Leviathan, Daniel's beasts, and ancient chaos gods. It represents empire, false divinity, and total control. Its return is not physical revival, it is systemic resurrection. Tyranny reborn under new names. Old evils wearing modern faces. The beast rises because humanity chooses it. Revelation is clear, the world worships the beast willingly. 8. Why the beasts must rise. The return of these beings is not failure, it is revelation. In ancient theology, judgment is not about punishment. It is about exposure. The beasts rise to reveal what humanity has become. Leviathan reveals uncontrollable chaos. Behemoth exposes abuse of power. Jormungandr exposes broken cycles. The Watchers reveal corrupted knowledge. The beast reveals willing submission to false gods. They rise because restraint ends. 9. The final truth, humanity is the last seal. The most unsettling revelation of all is this: the beasts do not break free on their own. They are released. In scripture and myth alike, seals are opened, chains are loosened, gates are unlocked. And humanity, through violence, pride, and moral collapse, is often the one holding the keys. The beasts rise again not because they are unstoppable, but because the world becomes ready for them. And there you have it, the 5 chapters revealing the demon beasts that defied heaven and hell. These ancient, untamable creatures remind us that some forces are beyond comprehension, beyond control, and beyond the laws of both mortal and divine worlds. If these stories sent chills down your spine or sparked your curiosity about the hidden realms, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a dive into the forgotten and forbidden. Share your thoughts below. Which demon beast shocked you the most? Until next time, stay vigilant, the shadows are watching.